Yeah. So with that, I know you mentioned it briefly a little bit about the research background. I'm so like interested in the decision to have such a intense focus on like physical media and things that can be used and talked about and shared in the physical space. So
Mhm.
what was kind of that push that was like this needs to happen this way?
As being kind of like a zillennial, like on the cusp, like a lot of my childhood involved those physical products. And my family was also like very much into art and collecting like CDs and vinyls and DVDs, and going to live events. So I feel like I always had an understanding of how enriching that could be and just enjoyable personally, for me. And then obviously in this space and time, with just the digital prevalence, it feels even more vital. And I think we all can kind of feel that internal compass, honestly, kind of like still yearning for those like tactful things and tangible things, that are just good for the brain and are stimulating and just good for overall wellness. And I think around 2020, I felt like personally a really big sense of urgency of like kind of I could see the direction and trends, specifically with social media and how it was affecting Gen Z and millennials in particular. And I definitely felt that sense of urgency and felt like there was like a lane that could be carved out for our generation that was focused on these things, but also kind of catered to our needs as well, not necessarily just like looking in the past and just kind of like everything nostalgia and just kind of like repurposing things we did back then, kind of seeing what a modern twist on some of those things would be and how it's relevant and integrated with the digital prevalence that we can't ignore either.
Yeah. That's an amazing answer. And I kind of want to specifically talk about the card game, which is going to be a part of this event. I guess what was like the work that went into writing and formatting and processing this entire thing? Because the product looks amazing. Like the
Mhm.
content is amazing. So like I want to get the answer for that first question, but then also just know like how long it took to make it
Yeah,
physical.
those are good questions, especially because volume one and volume two were created a little bit differently,
Yeah.
and they weren't created at the same time. Um,
Mm,
so with volume one, music was really like the inception, like was like how the idea kind of formed of like connecting with others through music. That was the idea that came into my mind. And then immediately I just knew I wanted to package it with other mediums and like being super into film and photography just made sense to lump. And with the process, I wanted it to be very natural and very much a reflection of me. And that's what I consider kind of like my design philosophy is cognitive and reflective artistry. So I definitely wanted it to honor that. But I also knew I wanted to like make the questions really, really good.
hmm.
Like I was like, I'm gonna make the best questions for this card game. Like I wanted to
Yeah.
bring a lot of intention to card games. I didn't want it to feel gimmicky. I wanted it to be a
Yeah.
very serious product. So I kind of just like went with the flow, which is why like the music deck has like a lot more a lot more
Hmm.
questions than some of the other mediums because I guess that's a medium I think I've been involved with like maybe the longest, like out of all the other ones. So that just came natural to me. And
Yeah.
I just had so many like questions that came up naturally. And you can see that even in volume two. I think travel has the most because I'm super into travel and space and
Yeah.
curated environments and things of that nature. So that's kind of why it's a little bit inconsistent and it's not the same amount of questions or cards for each deck because it really was just kind of what flowed naturally and like a little bit of reflection of just like my natural interest, at that time. So I always, with anything, any process, I'm like really big on refining, refining. So I would just write questions in a little bit. I had the idea December 2023, 2023, and then I knew I had a goal for myself like by the end of the first quarter of 2025 I wanted to order the first prototype. So like those
Wow.
first 3 months was just like making the questions and just refining, taking out a lot of duplicates, combining some that I felt like were redundant, and then also just like my family is like a really big help, so just constantly soundboarding off of them. And that's how the first volume came to be. And then the second volume I didn't make for maybe like 4 months later, because for the longest
Hmm.
I wasn't sure what I wanted like the third. I just didn't make up my mind on what I wanted the 3 to be. I
Yeah.
kinda had it loosely, but just hadn't made up my mind, and then about 4 months later, and then that was a lot quicker because at that point I had done the first volume. Again, same
Right.
process, which is why travel and food have a little bit more, and even the movement with dance and sport, like, just kind of, like, tailoring it to what I think, movement as an art form and is, like, expression and transforming tension and, like, again, just kind of, like, my lens on it, so yeah, so that came I don't even remember, like, how long that took, I just know it was much quicker, and came a few months after the first volume.